In the video where I built my Windows XP 20th anniversary gaming PC, I said that I was targeting 2004 as the year for all of the hardware I was choosing. This gave me a good range of what still looked like Windows XP hardware, but would allow the system to run whatever game I would want that would be really applicable for a system like this. That meant, though, that I needed to get a monitor from 2004, and that was somewhat interesting because at the time, CRTs were still considered to be one of, if not the best options to get. I actually spent quite a bit of time researching what would be the best monitor to get, and the Samsung 172X that I settled on here came out on top in almost all the shootouts that were available, including this one from Maximum PC that was looking at which LCDs were better than CRTs. Now, an interesting thing about that review is that they were specifically looking at the gaming performance of all of these monitors, and they were comparing them in specific to CRTs, which were inherently better at the time. Now, this is kind of funny because none of the monitors there were designed for gaming. Matter of fact, their top pick monitor was a Dell workstation monitor, so definitely not something that was designed for gamers. Now, part of this was just because LCD monitors being good was still a relatively new thing, so having one specifically focused on a niche market like gaming really didn't make sense. Now, it didn't take long after that for the monitor manufacturers to start specifically targeting the gaming market, and there would actually be some examples of this in the very next year. Now, an interesting coincidence here is that I actually had an extremely difficult time finding a brand new in-box Samsung 172X. Matter of fact, that was the very last component I got for this computer, although it turned out not to be new in the box in the end, but I tried my best. In the meantime, though, while I was trying to get my hands on one of those, I decided to settle on a monitor from the next year. And in a bit of a coincidental turn here, as far as I can tell, this Viewsonic VX724 is the world's first gaming monitor. So today, we're going to unbox this brand new example of it and try and put it through its paces. Now, what is it that makes the VX724 the world's first gaming monitor? Well, it's more than just the fact that it advertises itself as being for games, which the box for the Samsung 172X does not. What makes this monitor specifically for gaming is the sticker added on right here, boasting a 3 milliseconds response time. Now, when you start digging into the history of this display, there's a funny reason that that is a sticker and it's not actually printed on the side of the box. It's because they couldn't decide what the response time actually was. The earlier advertisements for this monitor listed it at 4 milliseconds, going off into reviews with that specification. And then when it launched, they brought it down to 3. This is kind of funny. It's possible they managed to squeeze an extra 25% out of it for performance, or they were just trying to make the number lower. They were still kind of groundbreaking in advertising the milliseconds response time specifically. In that Maximum PC article, they don't have response times to compare between all of the monitors, despite specifically knowing that that was what the most critical thing was they were looking for. So having it advertised at all was still something for them to brag about. That's enough talking about it though. Let's actually get it out and take a look at it. I have opened the box, but I haven't removed it or turned it on. And I only opened the box before because I paid way too much money for this thing. So I have never seen this in action, and I'm pretty excited about this. It is, as far as I can tell, 100% complete and unused. So this should be the best representation of one of these we could possibly have. Oh, yes. Oh, that is something there. A never before fingerprinted LCD. It's hard to beat that. Now, getting into setting this up, coming around to the back, we can see this really awesome Viewsonic badge there. That's kind of sweet. And some rubber plugs in a VESA mount, so you could put this on an arm, and then it seems to be a panel down here. Yep. for the power, DVI, and VGA connections. And according to the sticker, we can see that it was manufactured in July of 2005. But there's no point in waiting, so let's go ahead and get it plugged in. I'm going to shut down my Windows XP computer here and get it connected. All right, I'm gonna fire this up for the first time. Oh yeah, it'd help if I plugged it in. No signal, that's good. 17 years in the box didn't kill it. That's always nice. Let's go ahead and give it a signal though. There we are, set up for the first time ever. Oh, wow. And that is completely uncalibrated, so the video quality is out of the box. I've not looked at any of this here, so I'm just gonna poke around. Contrast is about 70%. Brightness is maxed. All right, let's turn that down. Does that adjust display brightness or backlight? That appears to be backlight, so that's good to know. It will automatically run at max backlight, which ultimately I end up having to do with filming lights on anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. And we can see all of the information there. All right, now as far as the general specifications of this monitor go, it is a 1280 by 1024 panel that is 17 inches diagonally and can technically run at 75 Hertz. Although the process of getting to change the refresh rate on Windows XP is a little unusual because you have to go digging in quite a few different menus here to be able to find it, but you can set it to 75 Hertz and actually see a difference. That is running faster than 60 Hertz, I can tell, although it won't come across in video because this is only 60 frames per second. You may have noticed that it has higher refresh rates there, but if I give it, say, the highest one, it will actually take it, but the panel itself is still only running at 75 Hertz. So, let's go ahead and start a game. Well, I would say this monitor looks fantastic. It is genuinely better than the Samsung 172X. All right, I gotta say, this is looking absolutely phenomenal. And I picked this game in particular because I knew I had a checkpoint running up to this beach scene where it would be extremely bright and high contrast. And I wanted to see what it would look like in that scenario because that is the worst thing and what gray to gray response times are meant to try and show you when you're looking at what they can do. And this just looks phenomenal. This monitor is holding up really well, and I'm quite impressed with it. It's definitely better than some of the newer displays I have, for sure. And I would like to get down there and look at something in particular to help illustrate this. This is what I was really trying to get on the display. Red on tan. In my experience, displays that, oh, thanks for having to go away, that have issue with response times have a significant problem showing red on top of tan moving quickly. And this looks fantastic. Let me give you a demonstration of what I'm talking about on another display that I've covered already. The PlayStation 3D display. Now, this is Sony's supposedly 240 Hz monitor meant to be used with the PlayStation 3 to play 3D games. I have an entire video all about this thing. I love it, but it's horrible. The problem is its pixel response time is utterly atrocious. Let's do a similar test here. We have a red line on top of a tan background. As I move this back and forth, you can see how much it smears, and it'll even leave behind ghosting where the line pauses for a little bit. It's honestly really bad. Now you might say, oh, you're using a synthetic benchmark. That's not fair. It is fair. This is just redstone on sand in Minecraft. And if I bring in actual Minecraft and do the same thing, we can see the same horrible blurring happening in the game, which is something is very noticeable to me. Which begs the question, how does the VX724 hold up against the PlayStation 3D display? I'm just gonna tell you now, it's gonna eat its lunch. That thing is great compared to that. That's the worst monitor I've ever used. But let's go and run the weird line test on here. All right, here we are. And yeah, that's miles better than the PlayStation 3D display. I can see a couple of things happening sometimes, but no, that is much, much better. I'm curious how the Viewsonic stacks up against the Samsung, because that's a much more interesting comparison in perspective of history. So let's run this test on there now. The Samsung does feel noticeably worse than the Viewsonic, which is not surprising because its pixel response time should be 4 times higher. I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but the only source for pixel response time I can find for this thing is Newegg, and it says it should be 4 milliseconds, only 1 more than the Viewsonic, but it is very clearly not. Now, for my own sake, I have one more test I want to do. A direct shootout between the Samsung 172X and the Viewsonic VX724. Because at the beginning of this video, I fully intended on going back to the 172X because it just looks so good being all silver with my silver aluminum themed computer build. But the more I use the VX724, the more I'm kind of falling for it. This thing's really good. And yeah, I had already just unpaused here briefly to make sure that they were both getting the same video signal. And the difference is astounding. These are honestly incomparable displays. You can actually see green here in the jerry can, whereas there everything's kind of a gray mush. Now, the Samsung is used, so this isn't necessarily the fairest thing to compare, but man, given the 2 examples I have here right now, it's gonna be Viewsonic, hands down. The white balance feels better. It's so much prettier too. Wow, this is incredible. It's really hard to compare something like this in video. I'm going to calibrate this shot with both monitors to be the same. Each one will have the exact same grade. I always grade displays separately in my videos because they are emissive. So when I adjust the white balance of the room per se, it shouldn't be adjusting the white balance of the displays themselves. That's because they're different. So I'm going to just let these two be the same. And yeah, I think you're gonna have the same experience I am here. This Viewsonic is so much better. I really did not think I was going to be switching monitors after this video, but I am. That thing is awesome. Now, as I alluded to in the section where we were taking a look at the slow motion video, I actually discovered something, and this was kind of so obvious to me here that I was able to notice it from my phone without really a lot of scrutiny. I think the Viewsonic is cheating. And I think this explains the 4 milliseconds to 3 milliseconds mysterious performance improvement. It's overclocked. If you pay attention, when it switches from red to tan, it briefly becomes blue. And I think what's going on here is that it is overshooting. It is applying more voltage than it should to try and quickly drive the pixels down. And that's kind of interesting because out of all of the displays that I've looked at least here at the office, the only other one that does that is the Sony. And that was the worst. So it's also kind of funny that they were trying to do that as well there. But that means that a used one of these may not be that great. I don't know. Because I could see the overvolting, the pixels causing it to wear out a lot sooner. But that's interesting because that's definitely a trick of how it is doing what it is doing. It is driving the pixels as hard as it possibly can. One more thing before I move on to the next shot. I was about to take down the Samsung, but I just realized I forgot to tell you the Viewsonic was at the disadvantage in this comparison because it's actually on VGA compared to DVI going to the Samsung there. So the Viewsonic's looks really are that much better. Well, I have to say, I am really enjoying this monitor, and it has earned kicking the Samsung out of its spot because this thing's great. It doesn't look bad here. It's still got some silver trim and actually matches the speakers kind of better. So it's not gonna look out of place here going forward, and even though it's actually a year newer than everything else, but man, is it good. But I'm so glad to have had the ability to check this thing out. I'm pretty confident, the first gaming monitor, or at least monitor specifically targeted towards gaming, because I mean, it doesn't have RGB or, for this era, blue lights, it still holds up and still is pretty good today. Now, I am ending the video here, but there's one more thing I want to check out. Doom 3, to give us the opposite end with a nice dark game with low contrast, but I'm going to let that run out the video here. So if you enjoyed this, you may want to subscribe, and if you want to help support the channel, I am on Patreon, or you could get a shirt like this one of the far superior technology of CRTs. But that is it for now, and I will see you next time.
One man down and several wounded. We are incoming and need medical on station staff. Men HQ, this is Fire Team 2. The monorail track is destroyed. Unable to secure safe transportation back to base. Over.
Roger that, Fire Team 2. Fall back to the nearest station and set up a CP there. Out. All units, this is Sergeant Kelly. Fall back to Marine HQ and await further orders.